Hey guys, I am IBigandscary. I'm bringing you another StarCraft 2 replay, this time featuring in the bottom right hand corner AventadoR, our red Terran, and in the top left we have Arc Forward, also known as Team Echo's Lullaby, our blue Terran. Both players are in Masters. We are on Antigua Shipyard, and it's basically everything you need to know about this. It's TVT. It's going to be fun. Mirror matchups are always entertaining just because you see ZVZ entertaining because it's incredibly back and forth. PvP entertaining because there's all sorts of high-tech units that come into play that you rarely see in the other matchups. TVT entertaining because it's incredibly dynamic because there's so many different build orders that you can go to. You can wind up with Terran Mech versus Terran Bio, even though Bio usually gets melted by that, but you can see some nice harassment play, you can see some Banshees. It's fun. It's entertaining, and I hope that you find it entertaining also. Yeah. So I will be doing my best to call Arc Forward Lullaby throughout the entire cast. Forgive me if I mess up on it. I commonly look at the names at the top of the screen, but I shall endeavor to do otherwise. It looks like AventadoR is endeavoring to follow along a higher tech path just because he's going for that first gas a little bit earlier than one would expect normally. Arc Forward is not doing some sort of aggressive build down, throwing his supply depots down the low ground, trying for a fast expansion or anything like that. The first barracks are relatively identically timed out of both players, even though AventadoR has a little bit of a supply lead over Arc Forward, just one harvester over him. Not the biggest of deals, especially considering that the gas is already being grabbed by AventadoR, whereas Lullaby is grabbing his gas just right now. And the little bits of timings, it can seem like it's very minute and very, very slight differences, but in the early game especially, those slight differences, just a couple of seconds before stem finishes for AventadoR, before Arc Forward, before Lullaby, if stem finishes just 5 seconds before an engagement and he can stem in and gets a huge leg up because of that, that's a game-winning move right there. So it's important to pay attention to the gas time. It's important to pay attention to the positioning of the buildings, as well as it's important to catch whenever a factory is being built by AventadoR. So it looks like he's going to be going for kind of a Hellion harass, is what I'm assuming. No double gas out of him just yet. If we see a second gas go down, this could be used for something else. But with the reactor going down the barracks, that factory is going to be using that reactor. Good job there. Those Hellions will definitely allow him to take advantage of the wide open spaces that is inherent to Antigua Shipyard. And also those Hellions can do quite a lot of damage to the SCVs if they manage to make their way into the mineral line. And we don't see any form of a wall off from Lullaby just yet. Those Marines are going to be very vulnerable to it too. So a good play here from AventadoR, taking the more aggressive stance, which means that Lullaby is going to have it on him that he can be not so aggressive. He can actually sit back and relax, work on some form of a higher tech. He also has just one gas, has not grabbed a second gas. His factory is being completed, but we don't see an add-on from the barracks just yet. It tells me that that factory is probably going to be used for a starport play. We'll see if that factory throws down a tech lab or a reactor on it. There goes the starport next to it. We'll keep an eye out for the add-on. It's going to be a tech lab. It's going to be a Banshee harass coming out of Arc Forward. So this is what I'm talking about. Identical races, identical skill level, totally radically different build orders. And this is going to be really neat because we're going to see which one's more effective. In my opinion, Banshees are very effective. Banshees, you really only have to micro 1 or 2 units at a time to maximize the effectiveness of your build. However, with the Hellions, you lose a lot of them, and unless you can get in and go for like a massive hit on a fully saturated probe line or SCV line, you can lose quite a lot of the minerals that you pour into those Hellions. However, Hellions only cost minerals. They're relatively cheap, and because of that, the harassment that you do from that is definitely not as all-in-ish, and it's also faster than the Banshees. AventadoR is also grabbing his own starport, and in fact, once those Hellions finish, the factory is taking advantage of the tech lab, and we can see him transitioning into a more traditional 1-1-1 build. Going to be working on those siege tanks, working on the upgrades for the Marines, as well as getting out some medevacs to support those Marines. Arc Forward has his Marines positioned at the top of the ramp, hasn't even thought about taking his own natural expansion yet. These Hellions from AventadoR are not going to be very effective at pushing up that front door. We can see that they do quite a lot of damage to those Marines. I mean, look at all that yellow and orange. But in reality, the damage to the Marines is secondary. What AventadoR wanted to do to Lullaby was decimate his probe line, and it's not going to happen. Poor SCVs. First Banshee is going to be poking out from Lullaby in a relatively short amount of time. It is now out on the field. It's going to be working its way down, and it's going to run into nothing, really. One Viking is being created. I don't believe that there was a scan. No, there was not. She saw the double gas. I guess maybe you could expect this. More likely, this is simply him being cautious, getting out that Viking, getting out that anti-air. Not so much for Banshees as it is for a drop play. Really lucky there for AventadoR. Very nice positioning on that Viking, getting it in just in time. Cloak's not done for Lullaby, and unfortunately this Banshee's going to go down before that cloak is actually finished. So a huge win there for AventadoR, even though one or two of the workers did go down for Lullaby, and his harassment was much more effective than AventadoR's. AventadoR's harassment only cost minerals, and it definitely was cheaper. So that, I mean, is he going to cancel the cloak? No, he lets the cloak finish, and the cloak's very expensive. That could be used on something else, but he already had another Banshee out, and that Banshee, when it cloaks, is going to pretty much guarantee that AventadoR has to expend energy for the scan, because he doesn't have any static defenses up. In fact, he's just now building that engineering bay, and hopefully it won't be done by the time the Banshee arrives, so that it can actually do some more damage. On the other side of things, Lullaby is feeling confident enough to actually take his own expansion, something that AventadoR has not thought about doing just yet. Has he even started on that CC? He has. Okay, so it's right next to the command center, but the positioning of it tells me that he's not quite ready to take that expansion just yet. Banshee sneaking in through the natural, just checking out to make sure that he's not super behind on the economy. At the same time, the three Hellions that had survived initially make their way up. I remember this movie, except this time all the Hellions die. At the same time, the Banshee's making its presence known, poking in at the front door, cloaking this time. There goes the scan. 300 minerals right there, costing AventadoR 1 mule, which roughly translates to about 300 minerals. At the same time, focusing down the Marines rather than the SCVs, succeeding in taking out a total of 7 workers this time. Very nice win there. And another scan, and I don't think the Banshee's going to go down. Fantastic. Really good for a Lullaby, forcing so many scans, also forcing so much damage to the infrastructure here. Finally getting that missile turret up, even though it was very much belated. Very late. And this Banshee survives to fight another day. Maybe we'll see him use this harassment. Maybe it's just going to be supplemental damage per second, because both players basically have a 1-1-1 out of the field right now. Another Viking now for Lullaby in conjunction with the Banshee out on the field. If Lullaby maintains complete control over the sky, he's not going to have a problem dictating the pace of this matchup, because those Banshees can snipe siege tanks, and they can also scout the high ground. The Hellions pushing forward, basically getting chewed alive instantly by the 2 siege tanks positioned up on the high ground. I don't see how Lullaby is going to succeed in poking in and doing any damage to this natural just yet. No medevacs to pick up those Marines and drop them in the low ground, but there goes another scan on these Banshees. These Banshees proving to be very effective, and this is what I'm talking about with that micro control. Keeping those Banshees alive is paramount, and if you can keep them alive and poke in, just do just a little bit of damage. We can see him poking in just one more time, trying to snipe out that siege tank, and he's succeeding. It's a lot easier to micro those Banshees than it is those Hellions successfully. Yeah, the Hellions can be very, very successful whenever they can get a lucky shot in, but it's far more skill-based to do the Banshees than it is luck-based to do the Vikings. Unfortunately, with the scan there, that Banshee had absolutely no chance, but it definitely paid for itself. When we check out the resources lost tab, AventadoR's even supply blocked with the supply depot, even though it was well positioned in the smoke to scout the drop. Yeah, it went down, and that gets some supply blocked. Medevac kind of stagnating up. You need this down here to ferry up some of those Marines into the high ground so that it can start doing damage to the infrastructure there, but maybe that's a wise call not to do that. You don't really want to commit your entire force to a straight-on slugging match, especially whenever you've taken a bit of a lead already. Combat shield just now getting started for AventadoR. Is there one for Arch Forward? No, there's not. Siege tanks from the low ground firing up on those Marines. A pretty bad engagement for AventadoR. I mean, check out the resources lost tab again. He took another pretty heavy hit there, especially with the Vikings to scout that. If those Vikings weren't there, if the Marines had succeeded in taking down those Vikings and losing the high ground vision, then that could have definitely gone the way for AventadoR. Unfortunately, it was not as it didn't go that way. He took way too much damage from that. Saturation down at the natural is looking pretty good for AventadoR. However, the SCVs are going to be forced to pull back. A very nice stem from AventadoR, pushing forward, taking down all of the siege tanks from Lullaby, which is a huge win. All of a sudden, AventadoR is the one who can sit back and kind of relax. All he has to deal with now is a handful of Marines, and with his siege tanks repositioning to protect the mineral line, Lullaby is going to have to pull back and reposition his army. You're going to have to rebuild the siege tank lines, and man, those 1 or 2 shots from those siege tanks really did a number on those Marines. Lullaby's going to have to limp home. Overall, a successful engagement for him. I mean, 9 workers killed, poking in at that natural, seeing that there was no gas being grabbed just yet, getting a couple very good snipes on those siege tanks from AventadoR. However, the loss of 2 of the siege tanks from Lullaby really kind of mitigates the lead that he had. And now all of a sudden he's on the defensive, but with this siege tank line, I really don't see how AventadoR can push through it successfully. Those Marines basically melting to the combined fire of those 3 siege tanks, really beautifully positioned. There goes the scan a little bit too late. Now we can see that the Iron Curtain has fallen. I mean, the siege tanks on one line, siege tanks on the other line. No one's going anywhere, and there's a lot of medevacs out on the field, or a very lucky stem from one player who sees the other one unsieging. Really, this siege tank line is basically impenetrable from either player, and we're going to have to see some form of harassment out of one player or another. Arched forward, Lullaby, he's positioned far enough forward that he could actually take his third. I don't see AventadoR feeling confident enough to actually push in through this line yet. He definitely doesn't have enough Marauders in this mix. It's basically pure Marines right now. And he's working on that saturation. He's working on getting his own third. So I think Lullaby either has to break through the siege tank line, which would be very, very hard to do, cost effective, or he needs to push out and do a drop, or he needs to push out and take his third. So it looks like he's favoring the other 2, the previous 2, only moving out with 1 medevac. At the same time, we can see AventadoR is getting out a bit of a scout, but that poor Marine's going to get shelled to death by that siege tank, not before he scouts that the third is indeed going up. AventadoR's third is going to be finishing just a little bit ahead of AventadoR's stem and combat shield just now. Halfway through. Yeah, finishing. There goes the combat shield. Stem will be finishing shortly for Lullaby. Very far behind AventadoR, all things considered, but that was because so much gas, so much money had been spent already on the higher tech. AventadoR spending a little bit of time taking down the destructible debris to open up the back door into the third. Check this out. Nice drop from Lullaby. Unfortunately, it's going to pass right into the range of that sensor tower. So AventadoR, if he's watching the minimap, will know that this drop is coming. Really nice positioning of those 2 missile turrets, as well. 1 missile turret, 1 Viking, succeeding in taking down the medevac before it actually pushes in and does any damage. Unfortunately for Lullaby, that drop, even though it was well intentioned, doesn't turn out to be very successful. 3 siege tanks shelling down, succeeding in taking down 1 of those siege tanks, as well as melting away all the Marines. Are they within range though? No, not anymore. One of the siege tanks had gone down from Lullaby. The other 2 that remain from AventadoR are within range, and it looks like Lullaby is just going to be pushing in with everything he has, unsieged siege tanks, and will succeed in breaking this contain and protecting his third. Unfortunately, what he really needed to do was do damage with that drop. Here comes a secondary stem. These Marines are very weak right now. However, there's no Marines to protect these siege tanks. The siege tank line completely goes down, and what we're left with is no Marines, but a ridiculous number of siege tanks right now for Lullaby. So he's in a very strong defensible position, but I don't think he has the mobile force necessary to push out and actually take down the third and deny the third from AventadoR, which is what needs to happen. And I think the answer to that is going to be this, which is a drop coming out of AventadoR, and Lullaby needs to do this too. Really, it's a cat and mouse game right now, and there are quite a number of Marines now. Maybe Lullaby's going to push out, take a little bit more of a aggressive stance, maybe put the contain on AventadoR. At the same time, AventadoR is doing a number on the supply depots back at home, and in fact, if one of these falls, it's going to, oh no, 2 of these falls, it's going to supply block Lullaby. Lullaby walking into the siege tank line. At the same time, it looks like the drop is going to get cleaned up by the supporting units arriving right now from Lullaby. Lullaby pushing up into the third. He's succeeded in taking down the siege tank line that was defending it, and now with so many siege tanks that, I mean, there's just so many siege tanks, they just trundled through that siege tank line and absorbed the damage and really just did a number on it. AventadoR was playing this very well. He was doing a good job with the drops. He did not do any damage with his initial harassment, but the harassment was really just to see if there was an opening left there by Lullaby. Lullaby didn't make that mistake. Lullaby just now sieging his siege tanks, and AventadoR sees that and retreats very, very quickly. But, I mean, look at all those siege tanks. They're going to absolutely chew up those Marines full-heartedly running into those siege tanks, hoping to catch them unsieged, but to no avail. And then with the continual stream of Marines just arriving, you can actually see them stemming up to catch up with the siege tanks just in time for this final push. I don't see AventadoR holding this off 160 to 81 supply in the favor of Lullaby, and Lullaby's also only on 2 bases right now, and his naturals or his main's pretty much completely mined out. In all honesty, Lullaby could just sit back and relax on the contain and win this game pretty much by a war of attrition, but I don't think he's going to be happy with that. He's actually pushing up to the high ground. His tank's completely unsieged. All of them go down save 1, not 2. He's got 15 health though, so not much, but the Marines are left to chew alive all of the SCVs. They're going to go down, and I think this game is going to go heavily to Lullaby. I was a bit confused by how much time it took for the upgrades to come out for the Marines, but again, it was because of the extra gas that was used for the harassment. Those Banshees, hats off to Lullaby for committing to that harassment. The cloak was almost done when it got scouted by the Viking, and that's so depressing. It'd be so tempting to go back, cancel the cloak, be like, he knows it's coming, he's getting an engineering bay down, he's going to have missile turrets by the time I arrive there. Cloak's not going to do anything. But he committed to it, and he showed up, and the missile turret wasn't up. There was no static defenses, and because of that, he got 7 probe kills as well as a siege tank kill, which turned out to make it so there was an even number of siege tank for the siege tank line, and that made a standstill, which gave Lullaby the edge and that he needed to get the third out. He saved the third, forced the bad engagement for AventadoR as he was pushing up with his Marines into the siege tank line. Good positioning there. AventadoR had his heart in the right place. I mean, he was trying for the drops, he was trying for the harassment, but basically at every turn, Lullaby mitigated the damage. He didn't take too much damage from the drops that were successful, and he also made the Hellion harass basically just fall flat on its face, which is why I don't really favor it too much, is because it's so easy for you to do absolutely nothing with Hellions. Whereas with Banshees, even if it's completely shut down, those Banshees are helpful in the coming battles. Yeah, so if you guys have a game you want me to cast, you could PM me here or on Reddit. One way or another, I will see you guys later. I am Big and Scary. Bye.